Thank you for joining us today for Caregiving with Ease. We're going to be addressing burnout, assessing the needs of caregivers and care recipients, and really how to plan for success in these situations. We all know caregiving can't always be easy, but it can also be really rewarding, and there's joy to be had throughout the process as well. Tell you a little bit about our leadership team and who we are here at Dovetail. My name is Erin DiCarlo. I'm the founder and president. The co-owner and my fearless co-leader here is Lauren Watts. Joe Scott is our director of move management, all things right sizing and downsizing. And Julie Ford is our director of home sales. We are part of Compass Real Estate. We are the Dovetail group at Compass. Focusing on providing mature sellers resources and information when having to sell the long-time home. A little bit about our background and accreditations. Lauren and I are certified care managers, certified senior advisors, certified dementia practitioners, but also certified senior and specialty move managers, which is Joe Scott as well. We do hold a special credentialing called at-home specialist. So supporting older adults who may choose to age in place at home, adapting their homes or bringing services into their homes. And we have a special senior real estate specialist and seller representative specialist training through our real estate offerings and services. We feel strongly that the aging experience and the professionals and resources that are brought in to support older adults can really be managed with ease later in life. And by partnering with experts, we can help minimize the stress and overwhelm that many people face during this transition or stage in life. So we want to start off by saying, let's just set the groundwork here for today's program. So there are kind of 4 different scenarios that many people find themselves in. And maybe if you're coming to this program today or listening to this information, I'd like you to take a minute to identify with what scenario you are currently facing. And know that regardless of the scenario you're in, you are not alone. We're going to go through today some statistics about caregiving and aging in America, and rest assured that there are resources and information available to you. So the first situation, and unfortunately, due to just overall ageism in our country, we don't talk about aging. We don't always plan for it. And so some of us end up in the first scenario, which is total crisis. If you're coming to this program in a crisis caregiving situation, unfortunately, we see this all too often. You're kind of thrown into the fire because you were needed in that moment to dive right in. This scenario is not sustainable. You may not have the tools, the energy, the bandwidth, the resources to sustain crisis caregiving. But sometimes the silver lining of a crisis is it motivates us to reach out, make a plan, and get the resources that we need. Sometimes denial is a real form of self-preservation. If we don't address the situation, we can kind of put our blinders on, but in a crisis, we have to kind of do a full swan dive into the scenario. So if you're in this situation, it's still good that you're here today. It's actually imperative that you're here to get the information. The second scenario, which is a pretty common scenario, is something happens that causes us to start to step into the caregiving role. Maybe a fall or a recent diagnosis or the loss of someone's spouse. But then they kind of get back to a new baseline or a new normal and maybe don't need as much support until there's another episode that may occur, which then requires them to step back into caregiving. So it's kind of this ebb and flow and up and down scenario that we see often with caregivers. I love to give this example. About 10 years ago or so, at one of the Alzheimer's conferences, Alzheimer's Association has an annual educational conference, and I attended a caregiver burnout session. And I loved this frog in a pot analogy to caregiving. And the second scenario really speaks to this. If you took a pot of water and put it on the stove and turned it up to boiling, and you tried to throw a frog into the boiling water, it would naturally, out of self-survival skills, try to get its way out of the boiling water before it would die. Now, what's more likely is not being thrown into boiling water, but we put a cold pot of water on the stove, we put the frog in it, and it swims around for a while in the cold water. And we slowly turn up the heat on the stove. And slowly over time, as the heat increases, the frog ultimately acclimates and dies in the boiling water. And the reason I give that scenario is we're not always aware when the needs of our care recipient are increasing or our duties or our roles are increasing. It kind of happens in many scenarios, slow and over time. And so that's when we can find ourselves in that boiling water without even realizing, like, how did we get here? How did it get to this point of burnout? So the bottom two are really our goal for today's program. How do we get sustainable progress, support, and resources to not only just survive our role as caregiver, but actually have opportunity to thrive during that process? Yes, there'll still be some ebbs and flow into our relationship with the care recipient, into the dynamics involved, but we're still making successful, steady progress. And then obviously in an ideal situation, the fourth scenario is really streamlined support where the two of you can live your best life on both ends of this caregiving scenario. And I do want to say it is possible. We do have client examples to make this a reality. So let's talk a little bit about it. Regardless of the situation you're in, the National Association for Caregiving does a study every 5 years. So the most recent statistics we have are from 2020. But we want you to know that burnout is real. It has real impacts on our emotions, our socialization, our work habits. And so these are just some quick numbers on everyone is highly aware that we have an aging population. We're curing heart attack and disease, and people are living longer into later life and having more opportunities for incapacitation. Unfortunately, the person who ends up most likely in the caregiving role is 61% of women are in the role of caregiver. And because many women have started to raise their families a little bit later in life, many of these women are in the middle. They're in the sandwich generation, so they're caring for an aging parent, but they're also caregiving to potentially children that are still at home in a different generation. And so more Americans are caring for more than one person. So it may not just be the aging parent, it could be other family members, friends, but also their own children. I do want to talk about this a little bit. I'm a mother to 4 young children. I also experience caregiver burnout, not to an aging older adult, but to my children. And so all of the tips and tricks we'll talk about today can be used in any situation where you find yourself feeling overwhelmed or depleted by providing care to someone else in your life. And I do believe over time, as people live longer with more incapacitation, the caregiving role becomes more and more intense with the needs of that older adult in time. That's the thing about caregiving to younger children. We are aware that it's finite. There's an end to it. It's a season. Sometimes with older adults who may live 20 plus years with their diagnosis, the burnout can come in the reality setting in for the caregiver that this is the long haul. So things to look out for if you're potentially feeling like you're going down this path. Are you feeling like you're isolating yourself or withdrawing from friends and families and situations? We only have so much energy in our bucket each morning when we wake up. And if we're giving all of that energy out in caregiving situations, we just don't have the energy to deal with people or life. And so we can withdraw to try and protect and preserve our energy. Are you feeling on edge? How is your mood? Really doing a self-evaluation. Are you feeling frustrated, sad, depleted? Changes in sleep. Sometimes if we don't have the energy to process our own emotions throughout the day because we're processing and supporting the emotions of the care recipient, our minds will not stop. They're racing constantly. The opposite can happen too. Symptoms of depression, sleeping more, lack of interest in certain activities. That leads to you no longer find passion in the things you once enjoyed. I believe that this is a direct correlation with just your energy reserve. Back to the point, we only have so much energy in our day, and where are we spending it? And is it lifting us up? So if you're in this bucket and you're feeling a little burnt out, please give yourself a little grace. We are literally designed as humans with something called the negativity bias. We lean into fear, thoughts, emotions, and activities, things that kind of make us nervous or we're scared about. We weigh those things 3 times heavier than positive thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And here's why. It served us well early on, not in our recent evolution, Fear allowed us to stay alive. We ran away from tigers. We avoided situations due to fear. And so we weigh fear very heavily. The problem is just to equate the negative fears and thoughts that we have to have 3 times as many positive thoughts, feelings, and emotions just to equalize all of that doom and gloom. And I don't know about you, but in our current society, that's not easy to do. Take a minute and think about how many times throughout your day are you feeling good, like really good, like positive thoughts, positive wishes, thinking about the future, getting excited about what you're going to do tomorrow. Most people are just living day to day, trying to get through the day. And so you have to have strategic work and implementation to shift some of that negativity bias into more positive. And I can tell you, Lauren and I started studying positive psychology about 5 years ago now. And there are some really basic things that we can do each day. We'll explain some in today's program to help shift when you're noticing that thought, feeling, or emotion, how to name it, make a change, and move forward a little bit, because it will have a major impact in those energy reserves. And these activities won't just suck the life out of you, but how we can shift them into activities that build us up a little bit. So today we're going to talk about how to put yourself at the center of caregiving, and it's not being selfish. I know the word self-care is used a lot now, and it feels like selfish to receive self-care, but it's so true. The old adage, you can't help others until you help yourself, putting on your own oxygen mask before you assist someone else. But it's true. We cannot be the best version, the best caregiver to the person we're taking care of if we don't have what we need. If we're short-tempered or tired or burnt out, we can't do the role of caregiving very well. So we're going to talk about kind of these 6 pillars: giving grace to yourself, giving grace to the care recipient. This is hard. We're emotional creatures. It's not always easy. So when to give grace to yourself and to others, how to look for and actually execute a self-care routine, when to identify and ask for help, how to delegate to others that might be able to help you with the right skill set, how to embrace when things just are what they are and when they're difficult, and then really identifying and growing your personal support network so that you don't have to do this all alone. We're going to go into each one of these today. So first, I'd like you to take a minute or longer. We do have some tools. We can, please feel free to email us, events@dovetailcompanies.com, or you can download on our website for some of the tools that we'll go through today. The first is the self-assessment. First, take a look at your current day. Like, look at your schedule for each day. Literally go hour by hour from the moment you wake up. How much of your day, your activities, support your own personal needs? I can tell you in my life, I'm literally woken up each morning by a child yelling in my face, Mom, I need you, Mom. My day does not start with my own needs being met. So how is it for you? Who are you caring for? So who in your life are you caring for, and how much of your day and your tasks are meant for them? I do want to say too, it's not always about caregiving. Like if you're still working full time, if you have children, who and where and what are you doing throughout your day? And just journal that out a little bit, because we're going to do some scheduling activities here to see if we can create more time in your day for you. Second, after you look at your current day, identify areas of opportunity. We only have 24 hours in a day. That is true. But my father gave me the best advice when I was in college. I was feeling overwhelmed. I was at school full time working, and I just felt like there weren't enough hours in the day. And my father, Sean Maloney, said this: there's 24 hours in a day, 8 hours for sleep. Hopefully you're getting 8 hours of sleep. Sleep is very important to us. 8 hours for work. If you're not working, that could also be for, in this scenario, caregiving or volunteering. And then 8 hours still left for you. So looking at if you're working full time, and so 8 hours you're at work full time, there's still 8 hours left in the day to fulfill the needs of caregiving and add in some action items for you. So once you have your schedule written out for each day, really identify, get out your highlighter or underline what parts of the day is there room for opportunity. Now, this may take a minute. We just get so used to doing what we do that we cannot always easily identify what specific tasks take us out of flow. If you're not familiar with the word the flow state, it's really the state of mind where things are happening with ease and enjoyment and like we're feeling good. So when you look at your day, can you easily identify what items, what activities drain you? Is it, mom called again because she didn't remember her medication and now I have to drive back over there to give her medication? Or my daughter's calling because she forgot her ski equipment for ski club today. Like, look at the day and what specific activities or items in that day really took you out of flow. Once you can start to identify what are the action items in your day that drain you, then we can start to make decisions on those are the activities we need to delegate out to someone else. We'll talk about that in a second. Then we look at where is your expertise? Where should you really be investing your time as a caregiver versus ancillary tasks that you're doing? Like how many hours a day are you spending focused on the things that bring you joy, that you're really good at, or are you just checking a box because it needed to get done? So obviously, again, back to my situation, my children need to be fed, laundry needs to be done, the dog needs to be let out. Those things have to happen, but is there a way to add joy into those activities or delegate them to someone else so they're not just draining you? And then identify, like I just identified, my oldest two daughters can be in my support network with laundry. This isn't something I have to take on my own. We'll talk about, for example, with caregiving, so often, maybe, your daughter has a soccer game, but your mother needs you to go make dinner for her. Maybe we could bring mom to the soccer game and all go and grab a bite after out to eat. So we're getting to the daughter's soccer game, mom's needs are being met, and we're spending quality time together. And so that's what we're looking for you to do here is really look at how can we manage some of these tasks in a way that fill our bucket, but also get the needs met of the older adult. For a lot of older adults, things like folding laundry can be successful tasks that they do during the day that actually make them feel good about still being able to participate in their own lives. And then identifying your support network. Are the people in your support network supporting you? So oftentimes when we have these programs, when we say identify your support network, the caregiver lists out all of the professionals or family and friends that are supporting the care recipient. We're asking who's in your support network. Maybe it's your best friend who you can vent to. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe it's a professional therapist that you have on your team. Who is supporting you? Maybe it's a gym instructor because physical health is important to you and helps you energetically fill your bucket. Really get clear on what do you need as the caregiver to be the best support person to your loved one, and then building out that support network for you. And then where are their gaps? So it breaks my heart because in the beginning, I was one of these people too, when I asked this question, tell me, you as the caregiver, what brings you joy? Who in your life lifts you up? What's most important to you when you think about your future? So many caregivers can't even answer those simple questions. They're so deeply entrenched in the weeds of caregiving for their loved one that they don't know what their own needs are and they don't have a solid support network. So that's where the work really begins. Finding the joy. So I have to tell everyone a little bit about what's called appreciative inquiry. This was a massive aha moment for me. It's something that I've always done in my practice over the last 20 years of working with older adults. But when I first read it, written down in a book, a positive psychology book, I had an aha moment. Because of that fear and that negativity bias, we tend to focus on in our lives what's not working well for us. We just all start with the doom and gloom. But what appreciative inquiry says is that when we focus on what's working well, what's the positive core of the situation, we're more apt to be motivated for our own change. We will get into alignment of what needs to happen, why it's important, and actually make shifts. So this is what we've built our entire practice around here at Dovetail, is what's working well for you and how do we do more of it? So you'll learn in this program what there are joys in caregiving, what is successful, how do we do more of it? And it's not to minimize what's not working. We're going to show you how to delegate and shift, but really to celebrate the positive. So where do we find this? First is giving back. Let's look at the positives to providing care to a loved one. If this is a parent situation or a spouse situation, if this is someone who once supported and took care of you, it can be very fulfilling to return. I don't want to call it the favor, to just do right unto others as you would want done to you. There is great satisfaction, knowing that you're providing quality care to a loved one. No one can care typically for a loved one. At least we don't feel that they could care for them the way that we can. And oftentimes that's true. And you should find gratitude in knowing that you are doing a wonderful thing by providing that support and care. Caregiving can provide great purpose in your life, knowing that you are a needed provider of care. It is one of the best gifts is to be able to provide care to someone. So that can give a deep sense of purpose. Personal growth. We can learn a lot about ourselves through this process, through going through really challenging times, but also through learning about the experiences in life. Sometimes we're so busy in life that until we're forced to slow down, and sometimes it's in these intimate caregiving roles where we get to know a whole nother side of the person we're providing care to. And that leads to really deeper connections with that loved one. And that's that deeper sense of gratitude. This is back to what I just said, time. We may have been too busy to have real quality time with this person, and this caregiving role can kind of force us into that. Sometimes there's resentment from caregivers that maybe other children in the situation or other family members aren't diving in and helping out. And they're not the ones that get to have this sense of purpose and this wonderful time with the loved one that you will have. And then creating a beautiful and unique bond. I think there's something really special that happens in these intimate situations with caregiving that cannot be replicated by anyone else. So I want to talk about the first pillar, giving yourself some grace. All right, this is heavy. It is not easy. We are emotional creatures. We were designed with a whole plethora of emotions as a human. And so just know that not only is this emotional for you, and so go easy on yourself, this is super usually emotional for the recipient. So if you think about, depending on your own situation and where you are as a caregiver, many people have been independent in self-care, independent in life decision-making, and now they're having to lean on you to provide those things to them. And you may be their only like we call it your person. You know, if their social situation has diminished, the fact that they're needing care and support typically means that things like driving or easily socializing with friends has diminished. You now may become the only intimate relationship with this person. And so you get the good, the bad, and the ugly of the person. I have to remind myself this with my children when they come home from a long day at school and it's just this like emotional outburst and breakdown. I have to give myself grace not to be frustrated, but really give them grace. They feel comfortable enough with me. I am their intimate relationship person where they can be their full, genuine self and let it all out. Unfortunately for you as the caregiver, that's you in this scenario. So you often get the worst version of the person you're caring for. And that's not easy because, like your children, you're doing so much for this person. You're leaving it all on the table, and to not feel appreciated. But please give them grace. They're processing a lot of losses in their life. The collective, feeling as if this is an older adult, that you're not being valued by the broader community. Again, back to our society, we do not embrace aging. Youth feel that they have all the answers. They don't need their elders. They can Google the answer. And so our society has really diminished the respect and overall acceptance for older adults and their place in our society. And so if you've always been this independent, distinguished person, and all of a sudden you are no longer identifying with that, it's a huge sense of loss. So be gentle and know that these emotions come from that place as well. And then the existential changes that are happening. we are, for the most part, humans have the need to feel productive, to feel that we're part of making society a better place, to get up every day and have successful interactions and activities that we're doing throughout the day. If your care recipient is no longer able to feel their commitment to kind of the greater purpose of the world, that's a lot of loss for them to be managing. So just on the side here, loss of independence. And then we haven't even talked about cognitive impairment, the fear of living with confusion, short-term memory loss, the physical pain. If you are caring for someone who lives with debilitating pain, arthritis, a variety of diagnoses, there's just so much loss happening that we have to not only assess it, but add some of this back into their lives to minimize the emotional factors that we're dealing with here. So this is the basis for how to assess someone's overall well-being. This is part of Martin Seligman, who's the founder of positive psychology. Really the first 5 pillars here of the PERMA model of well-being, and then we added the H for health. We're going to go through these. We all, in this day and age, you hear a lot of kind of lofty terms. One is called well-being. How is the overall well-being? This is a way to actually assess and measure someone's overall well-being. So first, I'm going to ask you as the caregiver to go through each one of these, but then also work with your care recipient and asking them these questions. So in order for us to have an increased overall well-being and quality of life, all of these buckets must be filled for that to happen. So first is positive emotions. We have to have the opportunity for good feeling thoughts and experiences every day. It just is how we base our mindset. And so think about how often throughout the day do you have feel good feelings and thoughts. Second, engagement. We have a basic human need to feel actually engaged in the life that's happening around us. Thankfully, the pandemic gave access to remote learning programs, video conference calling. If we can't have engagement out in the external world, how are we bringing engagement opportunities, very individualized and relevant for the caregiver into their life? But this, for the care recipient into their life and their home, but this is for you. What activities do you feel super engaged? What drives you and motivates you in your life? I just realized I need to get back into a creative outlet. I need to be engaged in something that's not work, that's not mothering. So I'm going to pick up stained glass making. That's something I used to enjoy to do when I was young, and I haven't done it in many years, but I realized I need engagement outside of my professional career and my role as mother. Relationships. We have a basic human need for deeply connected relationships. And there are all types of relationships. If you're an adult daughter caring for an aging parent, that's not the only relationship that they need. And by the way, that's a separate program. Parents don't want to be parented. They typically want you to remain in the role as adult daughter. They want to give you advice. They want to, have a cup of tea and talk about life. And so the relationships that we have with the people in our lives need to be deep and connected and varying. So look at your own life. Where are your deep connected relationships? Do you have friends, colleagues, spouses, other professionals, other relationships in your life that you feel really connected to? And then looking at the care recipient, what do their relationships look like? Where's their opportunity for growth? We have a human need for kind of greater, deeper meaning in our existence here on earth. So this could be volunteerism. This could be someone's faith or spirituality. What activities or thoughts throughout the day are you feeling connected to a higher purpose or meaning that your life is? And that's back to the hidden joys of caregiving. That may be one of the gifts of your current role as caregivers, that you do have purpose and meaning as caregiver to your loved one. And then achievement. We need to feel successful throughout our days. I think this is where the burnout can come in with caregivers. It's like you're just keep feeling up against a wall because maybe what you're doing or you're trying to provide or support isn't working, or it's not landing well with your loved one. We see this a lot with physical caregiving. Like, I literally can't get my mom to take a shower. Like, I can't do this anymore. She needs a shower. And so this is where to identify what's not working. You're not having success or achievement in that. So how do we call in the right people to do that task for you? Because that may not be your area of expertise. You may be really good at reminiscing with mom and helping her feel good about past memories, but maybe giving showers isn't a role that you should have to take on. And then the last pillar is health. The reason we added this to the overall well-being model is because although our health does not define us, it is part of how we're feeling and doing. And so if we have chronic pain, that can have a massive impact in our emotions and our relationships and even successful achievement and activities. I do want to highlight that there's a reason we don't start with health. I think in the aging industry, we focus on health too much. It's all about like, what's not working and what ailments do you have? I don't think our health defines us. I think it's part of the picture, but it's not our whole person. And so it's relevant, but we don't lead with it. So, what is your self-care? Finding your why. And if you haven't been to one of our workshops on finding your why and why it's so important, is that no matter what activity we're trying to do in our life, and in this scenario, it's caregiving, if we feel that we fall out of alignment or we get overwhelmed or frustrated, we can always return to our why. So I see often in caregiving situations, maybe it's I'm taking care of my mother because it's the right thing to do. There are many scenarios, depending on your dynamics, that maybe the person you're providing care to wasn't a wonderful human for you. Maybe you're only providing care because you feel it's the right thing to do. Maybe they don't necessarily deserve that from you, but the way you are as a person is the way you'll do it. And so your why is because it's the right thing to do for you. But that can only sustain so long. What brings you joy and what? So I do like to start these sessions with take a pen and paper and write down, and we have this in our caregiving journal. What's working really well? What do you love about this person? What do you love about providing care to them? And by the way, if you can't think of anything, it's okay. Today might be a bad day. You can come back to it. And if you can't think of anything, try to go out of your way to find something. What's currently working well for you personally that you'd like to expand upon? This is another one. We get so sucked into the role of caregiver that we're not separating us, other parts of our life, other things that are important to us. If you don't have anything working well for you, like I'll give you an example. Everyone, I have not exercised in a solid 2 years. My entire, I'm an athlete. I'm high energy. I need physical exercise mentally, physically. It's good for me. I haven't had time for it. If you ask me, like, what's working well for you personally right now that you need to expand upon? If you can't answer that, you can't even go back to a time in your life when something was working well. So for me right now, I'm going to make this statement. I need to get back to exercising. That's always worked well for me in my life. So just think back earlier in your life if you can't think of things now because you're so deep in the weeds with caregiving, and then start that as your baseline to move forward. All right, this one is always interesting. And again, it's not always clear out of the gate, but who in your life supports your goals and dreams? We have one exercise, it's not in this program, but it's called identifying the attractors and the detractors in your life. And here's my simplest way for you to answer this question. Excuse me. If your phone were to ring right now and you looked at the name that came across the caller ID, would you be super excited to pick up the phone, engage in a conversation? This person just lifts you up. You could talk for hours on end. Every time you hang up, you wonder, why don't I talk to this person more often? That's the person. When we say, who are your supporters? Who supports your goals and dreams? It's the people in your life that you physically can feel the emotion when you're talking with them. And the reason that's so important that you have these people in your corner is that this is heavy work. Caregiving is emotional and logistical and a heavy lift. And so you need your supporters and outlets who are going to be your biggest cheerleaders. On those really bad days, you can pick up the phone and say, hey, Gail, I'm having a hard day, and you can let it all out, and then they'll lift you up and get you back on track. Ideally, what is your vision for the perfect future? We want you to get a little lofty here, but if you're a caregiver and you're in the throes of caregiving and the vision for your perfect future does not include caregiving, it's okay. There may be other ways to ensure this person's needs are met without you being the caregiver. You need to get clear on what you need to envision and get excited about for your future for it to become a reality. That's why we ask that you actually list out your bucket list items. Life is short. Even if you live 100 years, we have clients who say, it was a beautiful long life, but it went by in a blink of an eye. So it's important that you identify what's important to you. What do you see for your future? And then what are those things that are your must have, want to do things? So you can actually start to schedule them into your life. And we recommend that you do this with the person receiving care as well. Because believe it or not, we've had client scenarios where we were able to do these things together. We have a client right now who's doing a European cruise with a live-in full-time caregiver on the cruise with her. She has the finances, she has the ability, and she always wanted to take the cruise. So why didn't she? Why wasn't she? So that became a reality for her. I'm not saying everyone can take a cruise, but what I'm saying is we all, regardless of our age or a diagnosis, have things we want to do before we leave this experience. And so why not do it together, maybe potentially, if you're in these caregiving roles? Or that could be a great break for a caregiver. In this scenario, the adult daughter is not on the cruise. She has a personal aide with her, but that's a great break for the adult daughter, knowing her mom's living her best life while she's able to take a breath. And then finally, what areas of your current situation would you like to change? Be honest with yourself. Just put it out there, write it down. Don't feel guilty. No one has to read this but you. But what's not working? What do you need to change? I think just getting clear and saying sometimes what we need to change is the biggest step in the right direction. Tiptoe if you must, but taking a step in that direction will start to add up to big pieces of change for you. All right. So who is in your support network? And if you're caring for an older adult, who's in their support network? So we have our family and friends. We're going to talk about deeper how to identify their areas of strength and opportunity. But outside of that, I can't tell you how many people don't have a quality legal plan. Do you have an estate planner? Is the home and the assets in order and protected? Is there a financial advisor who's guiding and helping you? Things that are outside of your expertise in your wheelhouse, you shouldn't have to take that on your own. You can align yourself with experts that do this for a living and can take that off your plate. And really, you remain in control, but you're guiding the ship with the right people on board. This is a big piece depending on the person you take care of. It's really important that they be their own decision maker and feel part of this process. And so I wanted to say that as well. This isn't about you taking over and taking responsibility for all of this. It's sometimes just bringing the right professionals to the table and allowing them to engage with the care recipient to have their needs and wants heard so that you can support those wishes without being the one to have to actually do all of the implementation of it. So this is really important, and this isn't always easy to do. Ask for help. And I see this all the time with adult child caregivers. They're literally being all and doing it all for their loved one. You don't have to. Once you identify what's not working, then we can identify the people and who's best for the job. So first, identify the current support network for you and the care recipient, and then assess your strengths and weaknesses, as well as those in your sphere. So, for example, if you're a nurse and providing hands-on assistance with bathing, dressing, and grooming, you're good at, you're willing to do it, your loved one is able, happy to have you do it. Maybe you don't also have to be the person who's the house cleaner and doing the laundry and the meal preparation. Maybe there's other people within your sphere or your loved one's sphere who are good at those things. That is in their area of expertise. Who's best suited for various tasks? Sometimes we may have, if it's a child situation and there's a few children and one is feeling burnt out from providing all the care, think about what are the other siblings good at? What are they best suited for? And then assign the tasks that are good for them. We're going to get into this in part 3. You need to ask their permission, by the way, to make sure they're also in alignment with this. But and not assuming. So if there's, let's say, an adult son who's a financial advisor, and it's just assumed that he'll be the person to help with mom or dad's finances, mom or dad may not want their child managing their finances. So that's why we first have to identify the players and then really look deeper into the assessment of their skills and their abilities and the right fit. Personality is a big piece of this, to make sure that they're the right fit for the job. Who's willing and what tasks are they qualified to take on? So if you're not great with finances, please don't be the one managing the financial affairs of your loved one, for example. Personal care gets a little complicated here. One, ensuring that your loved one is comfortable with you being the one to provide bathing, dressing, grooming assistance. If so, making sure you're comfortable doing that for your loved one. Or does it mean hiring an outside professional to be the person to do that tasks? I also, we have couples. We have, you may be joining us as a couple providing care to your spouse. And people say, like, well, we took the vow till death do us part. We took the vow to ensure that our loved one receives the best care possible. It doesn't mean that we always have to be the one to do it. We'll be there as their advocate and make sure they have what they need for physical care, but it doesn't always mean that we have to be the ones actually giving the care. Assess your own energy levels throughout the day. When do you need support and who may be better suited? Sometimes it's not worth the battle or the fight. Sometimes we have to take a break and say, you know what, I'm tagging out today. I just don't have it in me. We're going to do this tomorrow. Or I'm going to call in a friend or family member to come be the one to bring dinner tonight because I'm just really burnt out. And then actually ask, after you've identified, you've assessed the situation, you then ask for help. Initiate conversations with those you've identified in your network. So let's say, brother, you need help with finances. The brother, Paul, is the financial advisor. You have to start to lay the groundwork and say, Paul, I know this is what you do for a living. Is this something you'd have comfort level doing with mom or dad? Before I mention it to them, I wanted to make sure you're comfortable with it. Sometimes we just assume that others are going to dive in and offer their talents, but that may not. Paul may say, this is what I do all day, every day for work. I'm so burnt out. I have a colleague at the office who'd be great for that. I want to come watch the game with dad on Sundays and just be the son. I can also tell you sometimes that's the best medicine for dad is to just enjoy the game with the son, not to be gender role specific here, but in theory, it's what I'm referencing. We need our children sometimes just to be our children and not always the caregiver. Ask the person if they're actually willing to assist and don't assume. So maybe say to Paul, hey, Paul, mom and dad are starting to need some help. What are some things that you'd be willing and able to do to support? Ask what their ability is. This recently happened with my kids. I asked all 4 children, they're different ages, what activities would you like to help out with around the house? And it blew my mind. Even my 5-year-old son, he wanted to feed the dog. That's great. But if I had just tried to assign all of them tasks for chores, there would have been a different buy-in from them. But right now, knock on wood, the chore chart is being completed with more ease than I thought it would. So really ask people, what are they willing and able to do before assigning to them? And then ask and engage professional support where needed. I mentioned in the beginning of the program, we have, some people refer to it as the silver tsunami coming. We have more people aging than ever before. There are so many wonderful expert professionals available to you to provide support and guidance. Please reach out. So here's how we delegate the task. Here's how we assess the abilities of the people in your life and then assign the tasks. You have to initiate the conversation and then provide clear instructions for a desired result. So if the goal is you're working full time and mom's alone all day and you would like people to come by and spend time with her, but you don't want like 5 people coming at a time and just being more work. Now you have 6 mouths to feed when you get home from work. Say, mom would probably benefit from a nice conversation and a warm lunch at noon. Is there any day during the week that works well for you to come? She seems to be overwhelmed with large groups, so I'm hoping for more of a one-on-one so she can really engage in deep conversation with you when you're here. So provide the clear instruction. It'd be nice to have a warm meal and a friendly visit with one person during the week. So you set what you're looking for. If you're open-ended, God knows what'll happen. You'll end up more people when you didn't need them or not doing the right thing. A lot of people, fear drives a lot of behavior. So people will say, like, I don't get it. My mom has this huge social circle. No one's around because they don't know how to be helpful. So if you called each one of mom's friends and said, listen, here's how I could really use your help, you'll be shocked how many people will commit. We do recommend a schedule and a caregiving journal, and here's why. We want you to recognize that others do things differently, and that's okay. Obviously, pick your battles. My mother-in-law once told me that when my husband was young and he would make the bed every day because it was the expectation that he would make his bed, when he would go to school, she would remake the bed, but she never fixed him in the moment. She never told him he was doing it wrong because she wanted him to continue to make the bed. Happy to report he still makes the bed every morning. Where I'm going with this is if you tag someone else in to provide support or care to your loved one, try to understand that they may do it differently, see what's working well. And if something in journal all of that, because we can build on each other. If Mary Smith comes in to visit mom on Monday and they had a great visit because Mary took out the photo album, well, now we know to leave the photo album out when other people come to visit and they can use it as a tool. If Mary Smith came on Monday and the photo album was a huge trigger for mom and she got upset and sad, reminded that her husband had passed, well, now we know due to the journal to pivot and not use the photo album when visiting. So work together as a village. Most people want to help. They just don't know how to help. Say thank you. Even if it wasn't done the way you want it, the best way for people to come back and provide more assistance is to feel appreciated and that they also had achievement and success and meaning in their visit. So just be sure to be thankful for the support that you get. All right. I am asked a lot, Erin, how do you do this? You have 4 small children. You run a business that helps older adults and families in crisis. Like, it's a lot. How do you do it? And here's what I say. Learn to embrace the chaos. It's like the ocean. Caregiving is similar to my life in many ways. We can learn how to surf or we can drown in the undertow. So we just have to embrace it. There's going to be really hard times and there's going to be tough days, and it's okay. Just take a breath, picture jumping on a surfboard and riding over that wave, because tomorrow's a new day. And if we can start to each day jot down and focus on what's working well, expand upon that, and then pivot when we need to on the days that are hard, or at least have a decent enough support network that you can truly tag out on those days, refill your battery, recharge your energy, so you can come back the next day the best version of yourself. So some specific tools that we recommend for clients in the throes of caregiving, so you can have some successful visits and ways to pivot and redirect. Story sharing. We all feel good about yesteryear, especially if we had successful child rearing or professions. Really telling stories, and tell your own stories. People don't like to do all of the talking. It can be a heavy lift for older adults. So for you to share your stories on what's working well in your life as well. Photos can be a great prompt. Make sure the photos are of a time that was of importance for this person, and allow them to go through and connect with you on the photos. Photos can also be, if you're dealing with someone at end stage cognitive impairment or communication challenges, bring your own photos. It'll keep you directed in conversation, sharing pictures and talking about things going on in your life. Sometimes we talk too much. We can all just enjoy some one-on-one human connection through pampering. Having a little kit that has aromatherapy. You can have nice hand lotion. You can have a gentle hairbrush. Oftentimes, this is interesting about our society and humans in general. We don't experience a lot of physical touch. I married into a very close-knit, large Italian family where there's a lot of hugging and kissing, but I'm aware that in our culture, that's not the norm. And so first, before you dive into any personal touch, obviously making sure that it's comfortable for the person you're caring for. But for many people, the only time there was real physical touch before this time as caregiving was intimate touch from a spouse. So it is so interesting to me that we go from infancy and toddlerhood, where there's a lot of physical touch, and then we go to adult romantic relationships, and then there's no bridge. But there is an opportunity here for gentle hand massage, back massage, brushing hair, engagement stations throughout your home. So things where people can have successful activities where they feel achievement. folding laundry. We have a lot of clients where their kitchen table or a desk area may be what we call their grand central station. So sometimes just sorting the mail or writing. A great activity for caregivers is doing your cards. You can work with the older adult on their calendar and do birthday cards for the year ahead. So maybe do 3 or 4 a visit, have them addressed with a stamp. And before you put the stamp on, you put the date to send them out. And that can be a great activity. Holiday cards, thank you cards, puzzles. So there's opportunities to create these little stations throughout the home. So while you're providing care or making dinner, they're also participating in activity where they have a sense of purpose and achievement throughout the day. There are some great websites. There's a magazine that we subscribe for some of our clients called Rewind. It's wonderful magazines from the past. So it's all articles. The magazine feels like it's from the 1950s or 1960s. Great stories from those eras, great prompting conversation pieces in that. And then music, hobbies, things from there. Oftentimes when we're just venting, we come in and, oh, this is what I have going on, and we may lose the senior in conversation. Bring them back to their time. Talk about the things that brought them joy. Put on music or movies from their time to help with engagement opportunity, so that maybe you do have to get some things checked off your list, or maybe you can engage with them and learn something new that you didn't know before. I do want to talk about environmental approach, creating a familiar space. It is also just very important that we have environments that are setting us up for success with caregiving. For example, low vision, not all older adults' vision changes as we age. We need 60% more light in our rooms and spaces by the time we're 60 than we did earlier in life. And so making sure that our environment is conducive and set up for success. So increasing lighting, making sure that spaces are free and open for engagement and opportunities. Obviously, our goal is for someone to stay healthy, active, and so that the caregiving doesn't have to increase sooner than it should. So really making sure that these spaces are safe for someone to navigate and live in. Bring them with you. We talk a lot about, if you have other things going on in your life, bring your loved one if you're able. Even if they have a home caregiver that you hire to bring in, that doesn't mean they should stay home all day. Keep the loved one out and about and engaged with you, even if it means being with additional support. I'm just thinking about when my parents, as they get older, like they would love to come and sit in on some of the programs and presentations that I give professionally, not as a consumer of my information, but as a proud parent. That could be a fun activity for my parents one day. And then elevate their living experience. Like if you're noticing things in their home or their environment that can be improved, improve it. Work with them on ways to improve that environment. I mentioned earlier, to have these things, some of the engagement opportunities that you create, keep them out and easily accessible for other people that are coming to visit. Make it easy for people to help you. Make the experience fun and engaging for them so that they'll come back and want to be part of your caregiving experience. Use labeling techniques to promote independence. This is for, so for example, for an older adult, if it's not easy for them to know where things are being put or where things are being left, you could say, magazines, if there's a area where mom has always loved to read her magazines, like labeling things in certain areas to promote independence for her to do things on her own. If you need resources, not only for caregivers, but also the recipients, there are so many wonderful organizations and resources at your fingertips. Here at Dovetail, it's always a complimentary consultation. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll connect you with your local resources. We want to make sure that you have not only the professional resources, but there are great caregiver support groups. If you're dealing with a recent diagnosis, I just came from a downsizing event where a woman's husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's a year ago, and no resources have been given to her. It's just like, we'll see you every year for a follow-up. So I explained the importance of having resources, not only for him to process his diagnosis and feel prepared for what's coming with education, but for her as the caregiver. That's a lot to know you have a progressive disease diagnosis and not have the tools to know what's coming down the pike. And this is the time to do it before you're in need of the service. There are wonderful financial advisors, elder law and estate planning attorneys, certified care managers. We've all navigated these waters many times before, and we can easily connect you with resources without you having to be in the throes of a crisis to know. You don't know what you don't know. And for all of us in elder care, we've seen these scenarios before where we can hopefully connect you before you get to that. There's some great online education. One of my favorite is thebucket.com. If you're not familiar with that website, please go check it out. They have some amazing articles, not just for caregivers, but just talking about stuff that's hard in a very different, positive, some humor, but great resources. And then here at Dovetail Companies, obviously, we're more than just care managers, move managers, and senior real estate specialists. We are really age well advocates, positive psychology enthusiasts. We feel strongly that regardless of where you are in your journey, there's life left to live, and to do it with some excitement for this next chapter. And then obviously caregiver support. There are some professional networks to help you. So we really appreciate you joining us today. If any of this is landing with you or you wanted more information, you can scan this QR code on your screen to download a copy of our caregiving journal, where you can each day really focus on what's going well. How are you filling your needs? What are your self-care routines, and identify where you may need some support? Who are the people who can help you? And then obviously don't ever hesitate to reach out if you need more information. It's never too early to start the conversation. Thank you for joining us today. Take care.